On this episode, we're sitting down with Vincenzo of Miniatures Den to discuss how miniature painting has improved his mental health and help him overcome depression and suicidal thoughts. I'm Captain Nostalgia, and this is the Victims and Villains podcast, a podcast extension of the nonprofit that educates and engages individuals on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. Brace yourselves for this impactful, heartbreaking, and inspiring story. The show starts right now. This episode did not turn out the way that I thought it would go, and I'm super excited about that. Please help me in welcoming from Miniatures Den's Mr. Vincenzo.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm super excited to have you here, and I'm joined once again by Mr. Mark Moore.
Yo.
Well, this is going to be a different episode than the one we did with our tutorial style of painting. This is actually going to be jumping into Vincenzo. This is your story and kind of the impact that miniature painting had on your life. And I'm just wondering, before we kind of get into your story and the depression that is kind of the undercurrent to it, and kind of how painting was the savior in that story, if you can kind of like give us a little bit of background into kind of what your childhood was like and what it was like growing up.
I didn't have a very fun childhood, unfortunately, because I grew up as third of three children. I have two older sisters, and as I was growing up, my mother tended to be friendlier towards my sisters than she was towards me. I never really had a father figure because my father was traveling a lot for work when I was a kid, and when he was back home, we would all prefer that he was traveling because he was extremely jealous. Thankfully, he never became violent with my mother, but insults were flying literally constantly in my household whenever both of them were inside the house, to the point where one of our children, as children, had to be always in presence of my mother at all times, because my father would randomly call her when he was traveling, asking to speak with one of us to see if we were checking up on her or if she was cheating on him. So I was prevented from having a normal childhood because I could never really participate in events or things where children were involved, because I had to stay home to check up on my mother so she wouldn't cheat on my father in his own narrative. And by being the last of three children, I also grew up with a massive amount of competition, because everything I did wasn't on par of my sisters, which now that I'm 30, I know why it wasn't on par, because my sisters were 8 and 10 years older than me. How can you compare the quality of something done by a 10 years old against a 2 years old? Of course the 10 years old is going to win. So like now I rationalize it, but when I was a kid, it just felt like I was nothing. And I grew up thinking I was nothing. And my mother got to the point of telling me she would have rather aborted me, and I was a missed pill, because she forgot to take it, and that's why I'm here, and she should have aborted me. So it was a fine childhood after all. Very fun. Very good and enjoyable.
So I started following your Twitch a couple weeks ago and had been fairly active on there. And one of the first things I asked was how long you had been painting, because when I had seen your work on the stream, I think I had found you on Instagram first, is how I came across it, and followed some links and ended up over there. Your work, when I asked, you said you had been painting like 3 years. And at first I didn't believe you. I thought you were kind of screwing with me. Because it's on just a whole different level. People that I know personally that have been painting 10, 15, 20 years aren't on that level. And then I asked how you got into painting, and the story you gave me, I went back to Josh and the other guys here on the podcast and was like, hey, I just found this painting this is his story he gave me and how he got into it. And we had just started discussing doing a short painter series for hobbying with, we had already had a plan in place for having an episode with Miniac Scott, Kenny Boucher over at Next Level Painting, and Brent from Goobertown Hobbies. And one of the first responses I got was, hey, he'd be great for the show. So do you mind following up how you got into painting, now that kind of whole mindset that you gave me when I asked makes more sense now that I know more about your childhood? How did you get into painting, following up from that?
Okay, so after high school, I had a lot of troubles in high school in a sense that I wasn't a bad student, but I was the kind of student that never opens a book, ever. So I would just show up in class, put my forehead on the desk and just listen to what the professor was saying, and that was my way of studying. I would half fall asleep in school. But it got to a point where, unfortunately, things didn't go too well because I wanted to switch between an economical school to a linguistical school, to speak more English, do more languages, because that's what I liked at the time. And unfortunately, I failed the exam to switch from the school, so I fell massively in depression then, and it was awful. I dropped out of school for a couple of years, then I went back to it, and I finished it. So I ended up graduating from high school at the age of 20 instead of 18. From that on, I already had basically signed my death, in a sense, because Italy, but everywhere in the world, if you aren't on speed when it comes to instruction, you're done, because having a high school degree means nothing, basically. So you need to have a university degree if you want to do well, but you are too old for university because you're 2 years behind people. So that alone was not helping me too much. So I ended up looking for jobs left and right, and I couldn't really find one. I ended up spending 6 years of my life, almost 7, looking for a job and not being able to find one. I could only do some odd jobs like extra in the opera theater, which is a very Italian thing. It's very funny, actually. But yeah, I ended up being an extra in the opera theater and did very ugly jobs that weren't paying me nearly enough. So it ended up to a point where I was paying to work because the wage they gave me basically didn't cover the cost of traveling to work. So it was awful. And I got to the point where depression really took a hold of me. I became hopeless, which is the last stage of depression, at least in my experience, in a sense that there's a difference between feeling like things aren't going well and feeling like the universe is against you, and that's depression. And then there's the feeling where you deserve it, and all you're going to do is deserve it for the rest of your life because you are indeed nothing. That's hopelessness, and that's what I was. I was like, okay, I wasted my life. This is over. There's no point in keep going like this. I am a burden to my family and my friends, and because my friends always tried helping me, including me in things. So they would pay for my food maybe if we were out for dinner, or they would pay for video games so we could play together. But I felt such a leech because I had no income and my parents weren't giving me any money. And I got to the point where I seriously considered suicide. Like I was looking down the window thinking how weird would it be to jump from there and how painful would it be to touch the ground. And then I started planning around it, and I was thinking about writing a message. But thankfully, one night, while talking to my girlfriend, I mentioned that in one of my ravings that as a child, one of the things I was never allowed to do was paint minis. Because when I was a kid, when I was like 14, I met people that played war games, and I was very interested in the idea of painting minis. So I always would have wanted to start painting miniatures, but I was never allowed by my parents because, of course, they didn't like me very much. So my girlfriend, in an effort to pick me up in a way and give me something to do which would at least delay my suicide in a way, she gifted me a start collecting set for Age of Sigmar, a few brushes and a few paints, and that's how it started 3 years ago.
And I want to pull back just a little bit. I have a feeling that throughout the course of this, a lot of what I'm going to be bringing to the table and a lot of what Mark's going to be bringing to the table as far as the question format of this episode, it's going to be this kind of like very non-linear, almost Stephen King's It type of timeline that we're going to be talking about here. And you talked about, in childhood, about kind of being surrounded in that environment of just basically like never, always constantly being compared and just never having the strengths or being good enough to kind of stand on your own. And I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about, like, one of the things that we believe here at Victims and Villains, and part of our nonprofit side that we do, is also trying to create curriculums that are targeted towards kids that are understanding how, when their body's going through puberty and going through the physical sense, that also you're going through a brain chemistry change as well, where you're starting to feel things a little bit more heightened. And as a kid, you kind of think that it's like normal if you're in that environment, but I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about how the environment of, comparisons and some of the names that you had talked about, and just never really feeling like you were enough, kind of how that shaped you as a teenager.
In the luckiest way possible, I'm willing to say, in a sense that I would expect somebody that has gone through the life that I have to end up doing drugs, or ending up killing themselves, or maybe doing something so stupid that they end up in jail. I got extremely lucky because something triggered inside of me, which made me think, I'll show you then. Like, if people thought I wasn't enough, my thought back was, I will show you. You're wrong. I became extremely competitive and extremely ambitious, which I still am. Like, even though I have rationalized my process in my life, I have come to terms with my childhood and everything, I still am an extremely ambitious and competitive person, which is why I am doing well in mini painting, I think, because I am taking that competition to something productive, right? And what I can say to teenagers who are going through a life that makes them feel sad is that there is strength in every negative aspect of life, because we live in a world of yin and yang. Everything is an opposite. So whatever depth you find yourself in, whatever awful feelings you have, all you gotta do is flip the coin, because on the other side there is a trait that is gonna be valuable for you in your future. So if you are feeling rage, fuel that rage and put it into something that makes you productive, creative, active, like alive. If you're feeling lonely, become somebody that gets people to be around them, Become, if nobody wants to be with you, make it so they want. Become the glue that holds everything together. Every negative aspect of our psychology has a positive trait attached to it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to define it at all, because that's how humans define things, right? We define things because of their opposite. Like, I am warm because I know what cold means. I am sad because I know what happy means. If you're depressed, on the other side, there is absolute joy. And you can find it in your own life just by flipping your perspective a little bit.
Yeah, that's saying that I went through a abusive marriage, my first wife. And one of the things I have found since then, that's been 15 years ago, 16 years ago, is that it still affects me now more than I realize. My wife now is great. She's supportive, amazing. We joke and laugh almost every day. And she a little bit hesitant about the painting mini thing because it can be expensive.
Yes.
And it can take up room. But she encourages, she critiques, and I've almost found that what I dealt with before makes me appreciate that more in her. And even as far as the miniatures go, if I looked at any hobbies previously, any hobby at all, really, it was, no, you can't do that. No, constantly. And my wife now is just Okay, we'll give it a try, see how you do, see what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't get expensive. And you had, in your case, your girlfriend kind of get you into it finally. How overall, once you started that and that happened right there, you got the start collecting set and everything.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find it helped you overall? And did you find the past experiences were kind of affecting how you looked at it and how you appreciated the hobby and things?
In the same way, somebody who's growing a bonsai feels, I believe, because when you're sitting at your desk and you have your puppets in front of you, I call them puppets in a funny way, you have your models in front of you and your paints, it's you and them. It's you and them and no one else. And it doesn't matter how much your mother thinks you're shit. Sorry for the French.
Oh,
Doesn't matter how
dude.
much your friends don't like you or whatever. Doesn't matter. No, none of that matters because it's you against the mini. So you are growing yourself. You are shaping. The miniature becomes you in a very almost narcissistic way, if you want to see it. But, all artists are narcissistical in a way or another. You become a god because you are creating something from nothing, because you have a bare piece of plastic and you are creating it. That act of creation made me feel in control of a situation that was completely spiraling out of my control. My life was super spiraling out. And the only thing that made me anchored to reality was mini painting. And I grabbed it with all the strength I had, and I haven't let go since then. And my previous experience shaped me in a way that gave me willpower to keep going. Because the way I see it, you can only appreciate something really good if you have seen something really, really bad. Yeah. People who are depressed, in my mind, have more potential for happiness than people who have never been depressed, because we know what it means to be really sad. So when we find happiness, we know we found it. We aren't spoiled. We aren't, people that just live through life and don't question it and just die in silence and nobody will care about them. People who suffer from depression are bound to leave a mark in life. And that's an expressed desire to leave a mark or be something is what causes you depression in some cases. Not all of them, but in some cases. And you can use that to give you strength, because you are, when you're painting minis, when you're painting canvas, when you are playing football, because every hobby does it, not just mini painting. Everything that has an element of creation to it can do it, not just miniature painting. But when you're doing that hobby, you are shaping yourself into a better person, because as your painting progresses, you progress as a human. I feel much better as a human now than I was when I started. I have learned so much, and I learned a lot about myself while painting. My shortcomings, my qualities. I learned how to iron out the shortcomings and how to express the qualities more. And that's part of my character. My painting reflects my character.
Yeah, when I first started this podcast, almost 5 years ago now, I was coming out of a really bad season of depression. I just needed an outlet to put all the things that I was passionate about, and I never intended for it to grow to be what it is today, where we're talking about things that weren't even on my radar 5 years ago, like miniature paintings and growing to be a nonprofit and an entertainment website, and making friends like Mark and bringing on international guests like yourself. And there's something about the art of creation that I feel like gives you a finer appreciation for life, like you had mentioned, but also too, I think that you absolutely hit that nail on the head when you talked about how depressed people know how to feel joy, or former depressed people know how to feel joy more deeper, because I've also, much like Mark, I've been in those types of relationships where I just wasn't satisfied, or I wasn't happy because like the person was like selfish or abusive, or just kind of didn't care about my needs. And really, it's made me value my wife that much more. But also I've gone through those those seasons where I hate life, and I just want to be out of this season of life because I know that there has to be something on the other side of it. And with that, your story, you talked about how you went through this like really long period of just kind of like searching for jobs and searching for, I think sometimes we interchange the word in employment for purpose. And I'm wondering, kind of, did you feel lost or without purpose during those years of looking?
Well, we live in a society where it's like a fantasy game, right? You are a barbarian because you wear an axe and you chop orcs down. You are a wizard because you got a spell book. In the real life, you are a lawyer because you are a doctor because you heal people. Like, our job is our class. So without one, you are a classless character, which means you're not very useful in a campaign, right? That's how people feel. And yes, I felt totally aimless because any job I would find didn't resonate at all with what I was as a human. And any job I wanted, I could not do because I wasn't qualified for it or lucky enough to get it. So I felt like I don't know, like a dice stuck in a roulette. You don't belong there. Like, you should be a sphere and roll around, and yet you are a dice. Like, what the hell are you doing there? That's how I felt.
One of the things, looking at this and hearing all of us talk about how we've dealt with different things, and obviously some worse than others. One of the things that I've noticed over the years is that some of the best artists and entertainers as a whole had issues with depression or something else. Look at Robin Williams, for example. Nobody knew that he had serious depression issues and was suicidal. He was one of the funniest comedians ever to live. Van Gogh, we all know Van Gogh's story, and he's considered one of the most iconic painters. I mean, everybody sees his work and you know who it is. Do you think that plays a role ultimately in arts as a whole? And I know you've said a little bit about it already, that it made you feel more in control. How do you think overall that plays in the creative process in general?
Well, I think it plays a role. Being tormented in a way plays a role because there is more truth in our actions. People who have a turmoil inside of the mind don't have time to do schemes or lie. We barely have the time to be ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, when you are worried about things, like I still am. It's not like I am completely squeaky clean now. I am worried about a lot of things. Like, will I be able to make it by the end of the month with the income? Because, my income is very, very widely changing by the month. So, like, I am worried still. But in a way, there is truth in my worry because I'm human, and therefore, by being human, I am honest. And I think that all of these people you mentioned ultimately were simply being honest in the weirdest way. Like, Robin Williams was being extremely funny while he was extremely depressed. And Van Gogh was extremely experimental. Like, he sold only one painting for like 500, what today would be like 500 euros. Like, he was very unlucky. But, I think in the artistical process, it's important to experience and experiment with all shapes of human psychology. And when you have experienced the bad parts of it, you can express them better on a painting. When you know what rage is, you can paint a character that is enraged much better than somebody who doesn't know rage, right? And the devil and art is in the details ultimately. So what we try to create needs to have shades of sadness to it, or depression, or fear, and they tell something to the viewer. That's where the art is, right? That when you give an emotion to somebody. And like, for example, like I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but I am currently looking to level up my painting, right? Because I feel like I have been stale for a bit too long, and I want to improve a lot more and a lot faster. So I have decided to push myself on the model I have been painting lately. But I didn't choose a Spartan warrior without reason. I chose a Spartan warrior because the model that I'm painting right now represents exactly what I want to be as a painter. I want to be unyielding. I want to be unyielding towards my own feelings of laziness, my own feelings of just wanting to give up sometimes on a paint job. And I'm painting a Spartan because it represents that will. Like the model I'm painting, funnily enough, represents exactly what I want to be as a painter. And through the model, I am allowing myself to get better, right? But if I didn't experience all of these things, I wouldn't be at the same time provoked into improving. So there has to be an element of sadness. I don't think you can cure depression to the point where you never feel sad ever again. And you probably wouldn't either. It would be so sad to be always happy. I don't know. Sorry, I went on a tangent.
Oh, you're fine. It's almost like dealing with the issues and the depression. You kind of get stuck in yourself. And breaking out of that when you finally find like the window to go through or the door to go through, it almost opens up everything, so you can see it in a broader aspect for what it really is and how it works than if you've never had to deal with this stuff. There's less there that you've had to deal with, so there's less to experience out of life because you don't know it's there.
It's like a child looking at the sky and seeing the moon. And when asked to draw the moon as best as they can, they will draw a little pizza, right? Because they only see the flat 2D shape of the moon in the sky. People who have been depressed have seen the dark side. And when we are asked to draw the moon, we draw a sphere because we have seen it. We know it's rounded. It's not just a pizza in the sky. It's knowing what lies behind that gives you more power in your artistical endeavor, I think.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us. With art in particular, there's a depth that, one of the things that I love about art in particular is that you can look at the same exact surface and two people, because of their life experience, can see something completely different.
Yes.
And Mark, I know we talked about this during our Seder episode, but one of the very first episodes that Mark was ever featured on was a movie called Starfish, which is streaming on Shudder now. And Mark kind of didn't really understand what the director Al White was really trying to do with those characters. And for me, it was this larger-than-life sci-fi epic that was demonstrating the 7 stages of grief. And so you have these two completely different viewpoints on what a movie is saying, and you get the same thing with a music or with a painting. And when you started doing miniatures, did you kind of find that as your healing process was throughout these 3 years of painting, did you find that like you were doing, a little bit more like sadder models, a kind of like darker colors in the beginning as you're still like kind of in the thralls of depression, and then kind of like as you're progressing to where you are today, like did you experiment a little bit more with more hopeful or more like stronger characters and models?
Yes, and it's funny you ask this, because I had this conversation a few days ago as well. And in my journey, I went from very dark paint jobs, where the first thing I apologize. The first thing I understood really well was shadows. I could always understand darkness more than I could understand light, and my painting of cold colors is always better than the painting of my warm colors. I can do cold much better than warm. So yes, there is definitely an element of sadness in my painting, because I enhance the coldness of things rather than the warmth. But it's funny, because when I started out, I couldn't get out of the coldness of my painting. I used very desaturated colors, very cold colors. Are we stopping? Sorry?
No, you're fine. Keep going.
Okay, sorry. And all of the colors were extremely cold. As I went through my process, I decided to break out of it, and I painted a bunch of very warm paint jobs to teach myself how to paint warm colors. And I feel I have finally reached, in a way, a good point of my artistical career, but also in the healing process. I have been doing a good job now that I am incorporating both at the same time. My paint jobs now have cold elements to them and warm elements to them, which makes the paint job better to look at and higher quality. But it also tells a story about me as well, because I finally be able to wrestle my depression into obeying me and being part of my character and giving me the strength I need from it. Because depression, at least in my case, I don't think will ever really go away. So it's part of me, but that part of me is using energy, and that energy is wasted unless I put it in the painting, in my job, right? So I have been wrestling with it to learn how to use that depression and sadness for the benefit of my work. And I finally think I've been able to, or at least I'm starting to.
At what point did you start to, really kind of move on, like, I guess to like the warmer colors and kind of like escape from the shadows? At what point did you kind of like write yourself off as like, I feel like I'm ready to progress to a more hopeful palette of colors and minis to, really emphasize the fact that these miniature paintings, they're actually improving upon my mental health?
At the start, I'm not very good with time. I'm sorry. Like, for me, time passes in a weird way. So, but I think it was at the start of 2020, weirdly enough, because COVID was in the way already. But in the start of 2020, I was able to finally get my first lesson from a teacher. So I spent time with another painter, which was better than me at the time, still is, I think. And I spent a week with them, and I learned a lot from them. And that paint job I did with them used very warm colors, and it kind of unlocked the idea of warm colors with me. And since then, it stuck with me. I became more hopeful, because I finally thought I could actually get good, like be really good at this.
Yeah, I know you've looked at some of my work, and there's things I've done, and I've always painted the same way, but tried to improve on things. And you looked at some armor I had painted here this past week, or was working on, and gave me some tips on how to do it. And one of the things that I get and kind of enjoy about the hobby as a whole is you can take one model, give it to 100 different painters, and you'll get back 100 completely different pieces of art.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big things I notice as we talk about this, we're referring to it as art. A lot of people that don't really understand what we do and what you do refer to it as toys. How is that something you deal with? With me, I just laugh it off and, oh yeah, it's my modern day G.I. Joe, so to speak. But as a whole, it really is an art.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the misunderstanding that people see it as it's just toys. How is that something you deal with, trying to explain this and make people understand what we're really doing?
I don't, because I think my work speaks way more than I can say. Like, in a sense that if you look at one of my paint jobs and you don't think they're art, then they probably aren't. I don't have to sit here and explain why my paint jobs are art. You can notice it. And I also believe it's not always art when it comes to mini painting. It's a craft for a big chunk of people. It's not art. I don't think anybody who's painting a model is an artist 100% of the time, because some people just follow techniques. Some people just follow recipes. Some people really think about the models as toys ready to be played on the tabletop. There is a lot more facets to this than just, is it an art or isn't? The thing with mini painting is that since it's so complicated, people tend to think of it as the most known part of it, which is Games Workshop and their models. And Games Workshop and their models are made to be played. So understandably, people who don't know much about mini painting will be thinking about it as a toy thing, because it is for Games Workshop. But like, when they are in front of paint jobs from people who don't paint just Games Workshop or paint really well, I think they can understand that it's an art form. And I don't know, like, I am a good painter, but there's people that are way better than me at painting. And I don't know, I think if somebody who doesn't know nothing about mini painting were to be shown a model from Mark Masclan or Arnau Lazzaro, Banshee, or who else, they would probably admit it's art without even knowing it's a model. They would think it's a 2D painting most of the time, I think, by seeing a picture. So, yeah.
That's definitely something that I will be completely transparent with and say that I had those conceptions at one point or another. One of the comic shops that I used to go to all the time before we moved had like a big like wall spread of like the Warhammers that we were talking about in the last episode, and the paints and the brushes and stuff like that. But they also had them there with the Marvel Legends and like the DC Directs like action figures and stuff like that. So like I understand the things about it, but over the last year and kind of like getting to watch the documentary, Mark, that you had sent me, and also kind of like watching it, and my brother-in-law also is into miniature paintings as well. I've found that a lot of those misconceptions are broken, and I've also found myself kind of, I feel like, with a finer appreciation for people that do this kind of painting in particular, because like there is a craftsmanship here that you really have to learn, and a patience as well. And with that said, like I want to ask, you come in, you being thrown into this season of starting to get used to the life of miniature paintings, comes at a time in your life where you talked about, how you were going to commit suicide, what the letters were going to be like for you, and how was that transition from, being in this very negative headspace to now having this challenge of understanding this medium of miniature painting?
So, mini painting was like a medicine when I started out, because it was something I could look forward to do that would take my mind off of what made me sad. So I took mini painting as an antidepressant, because I would end up painting 18 hours a day, and I would just forget about eating sometimes, because I was just so involved into the process of painting. After mini painting became a job, I fell back in depression, actually, because what I had to deal with was the imposter syndrome. Because, of course, after spending a life being told you will amount to nothing and you are nothing, when you actually get something for the work you're doing, you believe that you don't deserve it. So I wrestled with imposter syndrome for a long, long time, and I still am sometimes. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster, because like sometimes I feel like I can achieve anything I want. Like today, after I finished painting the model I was painting, I really felt good about it, because I did paint a very challenging detail, and it came out really good, I think. And I was very proud of myself. But there are other days where I feel like, wow, why are people even watching me paint? I'm terrible. I'll never be good at this. I'll never make a living off of it. It's like it's a roller coaster. But I think what's important is that you never let yourself go lower than a certain side. Like, there's a neuropsychologist that talks about how something is considered bad for you when the baseline of your life decreases using it, and rapidly. Like, water can be really bad for you, and it can decrease the quality of your life if you drink a stupid amount of it, because you get sick and die. You can get poisoned by water if you drink too much. But of course, like, the amount we have to drink is so incredible that it's not really a drug or a bad thing for your life when you drink water normally. Cocaine, on the other hand, takes the baseline of your life and it brings it down really quickly. So it's very bad for you, because you lose jobs, you lose friends, you lose girlfriend, you lose everything just after a few shots of cocaine. And what's important when you're wrestling with depression is understanding that the baseline of your life will never be a flat line. You will have low moments and high moments, and learning to deal with those low moments will allow you to skyrocket into the high moments, because usually, for me at least, the best satisfaction comes after the hardest challenge. So, and when I'm doing the hardest challenge, I am feeling miserable, and I believe I should be feeling miserable, because that's how humans are. Like, nobody likes being challenged. Well, when you beat it, that's when you get happiness, right?
Because you were so excited the other day when you figured out, was that a week or two ago, when you figured out stippling on a cape?
Yeah.
And how to make it work and blur transitions between colors and things like that. And it almost, I know when I figure out something like that with painting or anything in general, really, it's almost like you feel like you're good enough at what you're doing and you can only go up. And then other times when you just kind of get stuck in a rut, paint's not acting right, something's not looking right, transitions aren't working. It's almost the exact opposite. Like, why am I doing this?
But that's what mini painting teaches you, at least for me. Like, it teaches you to deal with it, which is super important, because in life, you got to deal with it. And mini painting or any art really teaches you to deal with the failure, which is super important. The best painters, mini painters, I spoke with many of them, and they all say the same thing, which is failure is just a step towards success, because it is. And like, learning to deal with failure, learning to deal with the paint not acting right, the model being a bit bad maybe, or something like that, will teach you how to deal with all problems in life. Because if you start small, you can go big. Like Jordan Peterson says, clean your room, right? Like, it seems stupid, but it isn't. Because like, if you can't clean your room, how can you be expected to run a company, right? So start by cleaning your room, make some sense of it, and eventually you'll be able to clean up the world even. And that's the same thing with mini painting. Like, okay, I don't like how my colors act. Well, figure it out, make it work. And if you do, everything else will seem more attainable, and eventually you improve.
No, you're absolutely right. I always joke around with people that are here that I have a podcast, and I always tell people, don't listen to like the first like 50 episodes of the podcast, because you're consistently it's a journey for listeners to hear. Like, you can progressively hear how we went from not knowing what we were doing up until what you're hearing now, and kind of the evolution of how Victims and Villains has evolved. And I love what you talk about, how we respond to failure is kind of like, you have to have failure in order to have greatness. But it sucks when you're going through those seasons of really just uncertainty, and like Mark was just saying, like, why am I even doing this? Like, there are days where I'm so burnt out on the notion of podcasting sometimes, where in editing, to where I'm just like, I don't know, like, I just need a day to myself. And what are some of the ways that, with the transition of painting going from hobby to employment, that you avoided ways of burnout, and also kind of taking time for your own mental health?
Can I give a very long answer?
Absolutely, man.
By setting up a goal. The goal hasn't changed. The mini painting for me was the same thing as it was when it was a hobby, and now it's a job. I want to be the best. Period. Or at least one of the best. That's the goal. Regardless of it paying for my bills or it being just a waste of time, I still want to be the best. That's the goal. That's the passion behind what I do. And it's been proven, and I was watching another podcast about this topic from a neurosurgeon that was talking about how dopamine is the best anti-burnout chemical we can produce. And funnily enough, we can produce it on command in our brain. When we're doing a task, any task, our mind and brain and body will absorb a certain amount of adrenaline because of the effort in doing the task. Now, adrenaline, once it grows up to a big number inside of your brain, will make you feel tired, fatigued, chronically even. That's what depression does. It makes you chronically fatigued because you're always so stressed about things, so you're always doing effort, so you're always producing adrenaline. The best way to fight adrenaline is with dopamine, and you can release dopamine on command. And the way you release it is by telling yourself that the effort you're doing is for a goal that you're passionate about. And as you're doing that effort, yes, your adrenaline levels are increasing, but at the same time, you are combating it with dopamine because you feel good about the effort. I don't feel good about a finished paint job. When I finish a paint job, and it might sound sad to some of you listening, I do not care about it anymore. Like, after the last brushstroke on the model, I cannot wait to ship it out, have it out of my face. I do not care about it anymore. I want to sell it and be done with it. Because for me, the real happiness lies in the painting of the model, because I trained myself into being happy with the process and the failures attached to it and the successes attached to it. So whenever I'm painting, I'm releasing dopamine in my brain. And I tell myself, and I really do, I wish you could be in my brain, because when I'm painting, I am constantly repeating myself that I'm doing this for the greater good, for the greater goal, the passion behind everything I do. And my biggest goal is be the best. And I can't be the best if I don't paint. So might as well just paint. And that gives me that dopamine rush that makes me keep going. And I feel happy about myself and I feel happy about my work. So to anybody struggling, my biggest suggestion I can give you is find a purpose. And I know it's hard, but there must be something in life that you like. Whatever it is, animal safety, you can just join Greenpeace, dude. Like, if the option is either suiciding or going into Greenpeace and living your life on a ship, I might as well go on the life of living on a ship, right? Like, whatever it is that makes you passionate, that keeps you away from the blackness, just do it. Just do it. And if you're passionate about it, just tell yourself every day when you wake up that day is resolved to getting closer to that goal. And don't be a spoiled kid. Don't expect the goal to reach you in a couple of days. The goal will reach you in years. So just take the steps. Set smaller milestones on the way to gauge your progress. For example, for me was, I I want to paint the model so that when I place the colors on the model, they are all on the detail they should belong to, and I haven't made any mistakes and ended up having paint on details where it shouldn't have been. That was goal number 1. It's the simplest thing to do, but it was a goal for me, and I felt good when I was able to do it. And then I was like, okay, so on my road to being the best painter, what's the next milestone I can easily reach in my mind? And I was like, okay, so I can learn how to maybe highlight a little bit, play some colors here and there. And I tried, and when I did it, I was happy. And I kept going. And this is how I teach people who come to me for feedback or give me money for a lesson. I give them the immediate next thing to do so they can feel good about themselves. Because more than teaching them how to paint, I am interested in triggering in them the right mentality to be able to skyrocket and basically become a self-sufficient machine, right? And that's what I try to do with them. I just try to trigger the dopamine effect. I slowly teach them how to be happy about the small successes rather than just thinking about the massive goal they have. Because only the small success can take you to the biggest goal. If you expect the goal to be there, like, oh, I want a job, oh, I want a girlfriend, oh, I want to go to Mars, nobody can reach that. Like, you have to take time. Even Elon Musk, that's like the richest man on the planet, like, we aren't on Mars yet. They're going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to go there. And he's the richest man on the planet. So, like, everybody needs to start small.
So you've been streaming a couple years now on Twitch. Was it 2 or 3 years? And anybody that's been following has been able to follow your progress. And one of the things I noticed, one of the reasons I really like your stream the most is you seem genuine and almost like it's therapy for you at times.
It is.
We can see on the days that you're not quite feeling it, but you're there for us. And we can see on the other days when you're just all there, firing on all cylinders, happy, the puppy's in the room, whole 9 yards. Is that intentional, or do you just find it that it's like sitting with a group of friends?
You have no idea how happy it makes to hear these words from you. You have no idea. Because one of my biggest fears about my streaming and my career as an entertainer is that not every day I can be 100%. There are, like, for example, today I was focused on the painting. I was like completely savant, and I couldn't really find anything to talk about because my brain was entirely focused on painting the shield I was painting. And I was feeling so bad because I felt like I was letting down the community by not entertaining them. And you saying that you appreciate this aspect of me, to me, means everything, because it means that I'm doing things right then, and everything is fine. And I don't have to worry too much about talking all the time, and I can just show my work to people, and they are going to be happy to see me happy about working on stuff. So no, to answer your question, no, I don't do it on purpose. I am myself 200% of the time.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today. I love that you're willing to take and embrace that vulnerability, because I feel like there are so few creators that we see nowadays that are on kind of like the streamers or the podcasters that constantly feel like they have to be on.
Because
and
it's easier that way.
It is. And, no one really stops to ever kind of ask, just like, how are you like feeling today?
Yeah, they're always asking. It's funny, right? Because I'm talking from the other perspective. Like, you're always asking everybody how they're doing, and everybody asks you how you're doing, but very few people have the balls to actually answer the question.
Yeah.
Everybody goes, I'm good, right? And it's so much easier for a streamer to be good all the time, to wear a mask and be just a fake object that does fake things for money. And I don't want to turn this podcast into a rant on streaming, but from the point of view of a streamer, I can tell you that there is a lot of backstabbing, a lot of fake things, a lot of lies, a lot of things, and I really despise all of it. I really, really physically despise it. And for me, the thing that matters the most is to be myself, 100%,
Sure.
because my mind is full of thoughts about the painting and about the uncertainty in life, and now my little doggo that I have to train so she doesn't bite me. I have to think about all of these things. I cannot think about the lies I said a week ago and keep up with the lie so that the narrative keeps going. I can't do that. I can't be friends with people I don't like. My community shaped itself into being the best possible place for me to be in. And I am with family. I'm not with friends. I am with family. I have built a family to be with, much better than the one I came from. Because the people around me understand me. They know, as Chaos said, they know that some days I'm not 100%, and other days I am above 100%, and it's fine. It's fine to be ourselves. We're just hanging out, and that's what I like the most.
And one of the things in the stream, if you ever watch the stream for Miniatures Den, the community itself, the other viewers, we all joke with each other. We all pick on each other. We all vent in some way over various stuff. We ask Vincenzo, Luca, we ask him how his day is going, what he's working on. And it's different when you tune in to some of the other painters and their streams. It's, okay, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And you can almost see where it's more procedural than where yours is more reactionary. And
Yes.
it's, this is who I am, love it or hate it.
Yeah.
And it comes through in the community too. And did that come, is that what you initially planned on it being, or did it just kind of develop that way and turn into that?
It develops in that way. When I started out, I wanted just a place where people could learn from me, and I could learn from them, because I wasn't a very good painter when I started out, and I just wanted to learn how to paint. Everybody I went to asked me insane amount of money to teach me even the basic things. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to learn myself. That's it. And I'm going to try to be live streaming so I can keep myself on a schedule and feel like I'm accountable for not painting. So I'm going to go live and possibly maybe get some feedback from the chat. That's what I wanted to do, just create an environment where people could talk about painting. But then, of course, like, me being myself made me talk about things more personal, which in turn made my viewers talk about things that were more personal to them. And we talked about we talk about a lot of things on my stream. Like, we talked about genders, we talked about politics, we talk about topics that nobody else has the will to talk about, because they usually fracture communities, right? Like, if you talk about the US election, good luck getting out of that alive, because you're going to get people murdering each other. We talk about US elections in my stream, and people don't murder each other even when they disagree, because we have built, and I say we, not because I want to say we, because it's truly us. Like, I am part of the community I run. I'm not the community. Like, the people in the community have shaped my stream as much as I have shaped it. And they have been able to make it into a place where people can show up, ask questions about painting or about life, and they will get an answer, or at least a conversation about it all the time. And yeah, it's just, I love doing this. I really do.
It's one of those things, too, that you have to be willing to be vulnerable with your community, not just expect them. Like, it's a give and it's a take, and that's always kind of been the heartbeat here with our community as well, is that, you know, we have a community amongst our writers, and then we also have a community amongst our listeners, and we want to let you guys know that, like, everyone that makes this content has struggled with some degree of depression or has gone through a season in their life where they've either contemplated suicide or they just haven't been in the best mental health spot. And conversations like politics and gender, depression, like all of those things are super important. And you talked about when you first started out about how you're looking for someone to teach you, and there's a lot of pressure that I feel like comes with streaming. We've stepped into it off and on over the last couple of years, and it's interesting always when you're booting up, whether you're streaming on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube. And I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about how entering into the world of streaming after you had been doing painting kind of impacted your mental health.
I wish I could say something smart, but I can't, because it didn't impact my health, because I came to the conclusion in my personal journey that at least my depression, I'm not going to say depression in general, but my depression is an unexpressed desire for something from outside. I wish my parents loved me more. I wish I got a job. I wish the world gave me something. That's depression, for me at least. Because if you didn't want anything from the world, you wouldn't be sad about living in it. You'd be happy, right? So I came to the conclusion that I just didn't have to give a shit about it. So the way I run my stream, the way I started streaming, the way I paint is by not giving a single beep about anything and just doing the things I do. So I went live and I was like, hello guys, how you doing? And if you go back in time and watch my first 5 streams, if you could watch them, you'd see that nothing has changed. Literally, the stream quality has improved, the painting has improved, but the things I say and how I say them, the very same thing. I haven't changed one bit, because I still don't care. If people don't like what I say, they can find somebody else that's gonna fill them with lies. I don't care. I say my truth, which is still better than somebody else's lie. That's how I see it, right? Yes, my truth might hurt. My way of painting might be annoying, or my way of talking, my accent, whatever. But at least it's me. It's a real person. We can be friends. It's not like you like 100% of your friends fully. Some of your friends have quirks and characters that you don't like, but you still hang out. And that's what I hope people will do with me. And that's what I hoped when I started, that people would hang out with me, because at least, I was being myself.
Yeah, that's what ultimately drew me to your Twitch, was it just seemed more genuine overall. So, and when you look at people's work to teach them, you're very honest about it, very straightforward, but it doesn't seem like it's a matter of, I'm better than you, this is what you did wrong. It's, this is what you did wrong, and these are ways to correct it. And you've always said in your streams and talking that you prefer to be a teacher more than a painter.
Yes.
And I feel like that almost has been the biggest thing that has shaped your stream and the way you handle it compared to others, and what makes it stand out. Was that planned, or just, again, goes back to this is who you are and what you like?
This is what I am. I believe that the only way to rise, if you need other people to go somewhere, because if you can rise on your own, you just climb. If you need other people to help you climb, the best way to climb is by being lifted by them and not stepping on them. So when I give feedback to somebody, it's not to step on them and make them feel like, oh, you are a few steps of the journey behind me and you're lower than me. It's more like, let me give you my hand. Let's go up together. Maybe you're going to be a bit slower than me because you have a life that is more involved in other things. I am a full-time painter. You aren't. There's no way you're going to ever reach me, because if you reach me, it's because I am taking it easy, right? Because naturally speaking, I paint 8 hours a day. You paint 2 hours a week. How is that even possible that you can reach me? But in those 2 hours, let me try to help you to enjoy them as much as you can, so you have fun doing them. That's what I do. That's what I think when I give feedback to people. And like when it comes to money and everything, I just hope people are willing to see me through. Because at the end of the day, like when you are a streamer, you're putting your life in the hands of others. The same way somebody playing the guitar on the street is. Nothing has changed. It's the same thing. You're putting your life, hoping to God that somebody will stop and give you a coin. That's what I do. And I hope the people that are willing to give me a coin aren't giving me a coin because they want to worship a personality they don't have, but because they like what I am. They want to see me through. They want to see the end of the journey, and they want to be part of it. They want to kickstart it in a way. They want to be investors in what I will become. Right? So that's, yes, I am myself. I don't like personality worship. I am really very much against it.
That's a dangerous spot to be in too, as a fan. I think that the more involved that I find myself with in terms of either podcasting or film critique, that I don't ever want to make people feel like they're this like almost deity or God, because that's a really dangerous spot for them to be in terms of their own mental health, but also to try and like strive for them. Because I think also the same point that from a consumer, it almost kind of gives you this idea of this impossible standard that no matter how high you hold that person up, that they're gonna let you down at the end of that journey.
That's what I'm fighting every day. When people tell me I'm talented, I fight it. Every day I go, whenever somebody shows up in my stream and tells me, oh, you're so talented, I stop and I explain why I am not talented. Because I don't like the word talent very much, because it means that there's no way you're going to reach me. If you say, oh, you're so talented, you are implying that you lack that talent, and therefore I am a better painter than you are, because I have this divine thing called talent inside of me that makes me better than you. This makes my work look like it's nothing, because talent brought me here, not hard work. And this makes you feel like a meaningless object, because you're never going to get to my level because you don't have talent. And I want to dispel that. Every time somebody tells me, I dispel that, or at least attempt to. It's not talent, it's hard work, and we can all put it into what we love, and we can all become very good at it, provided we spend enough time and effort and passion in it.
Yeah.
And the worship of personality, which is very easy to achieve on a platform like Twitch, it's something that I have always did everything I could to go away from. I don't want my viewers to worship me as a deity. I want my viewers to be my friends. Sorry, ambulances. Italy is very... Apologies, I am so sorry. But yeah, like I don't want my viewers to worship me. I want my viewers to be my friends. I want them to tell me I'm a twat when I'm being a twat. I don't want them to fight on Reddit to defend my stupidity like others viewers do in other cases. Like I want them to tell me I'm an idiot when I'm an idiot, and we can all be happy like that. I ask for feedback to my community constantly for my painting, and I follow it. I'm not better than them. I'm like them.
It's something as a hobby as a whole, and including what you do, that anybody who's kind of reaching a point where they just don't know what to do in general, you can actually go and pick up, and it might be a path for some people. You can pick up like a Let's Get Started kit from Reaper Minis that has paint, models, and brushes, and kind of get creative. And engaging that creative side of the brain can help shift the way you look at things.
Yes.
For me, I know I've been painting 4 or 5 years, nowhere near your level, but I am better than others that have the same experience and others that have more experience. And I don't say that to make myself sound like I'm better than people. It's just people learn differently and see things differently. And one of the things I've found over the past couple of years is I caught myself looking at a piece of metal the other day and how the light played off of it and the colors played off of it. And
you should see how I stare at people in the metro. They look at me like I'm a crazy maniac. I'm like, how should I paint you? I just literally stare them like a killer. It's crazy.
And it's something that came from working on minis for like the last 5 years, was changing my view of the way I see things. I started analyzing the different colors and textures and the way it plays off of this and that. Mm-hmm. And it might be something for people to check out that are just like, hey, I don't know what to do anymore. Try to be creative. Find a way to be creative, and the miniature hobby is a way to go. And a lot of
it's the cheapest one too, if you want to get into art.
Yeah, that is true. Because if you get into like canvas painting and stuff, you can get into a small fortune real quick.
You also need a lot of space for doing canvas. So like mini painting, you just need a desk, really.
Yeah, and you can get into it in a start from a start painting kit from Reaper, or even GW Games Workshop has a few that you get a couple models and a couple paints and a brush, and it's I'd recommend it for people that want to just something different.
What I want to say though is warn against the dangers of things like this, which is if you're thinking about starting mini painting, do it. Absolutely do it. But please don't start mini painting with the idea in mind of making money off of it. Just try to take it as a way to cleanse yourself and learn something about yourself and produce something. I have seen far too many people picking up mini painting or streaming as a way to make money and then falling even deeper in depression when they can't make it. Yep. Because it don't do that. Like, don't pick up something with the illusion of becoming the greatest at it. Just, I didn't. Like, when I started, it was a hobby for me. It kind of stumbled upon the it being a job. Like, it happened that it became a job. It's not like I made efforts to make it a job. Like, I wouldn't try to force it too much, because otherwise you're just going to be sadder. Try to have fun. Like, honestly, you deserve to have fun. Just have fun with the painting. Don't attach any economical aspect to it, because it's bad.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, was using it as a way to express yourself more than anything else, and just have fun and maybe change the way you view things.
At the end of the day, too, it helps prevent burnout, and like Vincenzo was saying, like further depression. You know, really understand and know your limits when it comes to things that, you know, you're passionate about and why you get into it. I've always kind of told people that the reason I love movies was because, like, movies were a means of escape for me in the beginning, and then I just kind of fell into the love of the medium, similarly to the way that you guys fell into miniature painting. And I don't think I'm so glad that you said that, Vincenzo, because it's this very real space where we have a society now where, because of YouTube and Twitch, it's very easy to get into those platforms with the intent to make a career out of it. And it's a dangerous spot to be, because chances are the things that no one's going to tell you is that you're going to be working a full-time job on top of this full-time passion that you have. Like, you're just going to be drained out and just have no desire or real love for life anymore.
I work 75 hours a week.
Whoa.
And I make way less than enough to survive on my own. I live with my parents, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to afford it with taxes and everything. So, you know, think about it.
He does private classes. He does the Twitch stream. He does Patreons and commission work.
I think that's a good place to kind of talk about where people can find you online, though.
Anywhere. My name is Miecius Dan. You can find me literally anywhere. On Patreon, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch, of course. That's where I work most of my days. And Miecius Dan.
All right.
And if you're curious about the hobby, his is an interesting Twitch to check out.
Yeah, if you have questions, show up. I will answer any question you have about the hobby. I'll be super happy to do it.
We'll have links in the descriptions below wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Also, we're going to have a link to our miniature paintings tutorial that we did right before this episode. But Mark is also a fellow miniature painter. Where can people find you online?
I'm basically just on Instagram, Titanium Juggernaut Painting.
You gotta start somewhere, man. You guys can follow me on Letterboxd in my 2021 film journey that has been leaking over into our Instagram as well. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Letterboxd as well. You guys can go to victimsandvillains.net where you guys can find more episodes, movie reviews from Mark, myself, and other talented writers, as well as all of our social media, and most importantly, our suicide prevention and mental health resource library. The real reason why we do this show. All of those links are going to be in the show notes for wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode one more time. Vincenzo, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this
Thank you so
episode.
much for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. So we're going to be jumping...
Don't be a victim or a villain.
Yeah.
Be a hero. I wanted to say this since we started the call. Sorry.
Thank you.
Or an alpaca. If
Yeah,
you
an
join the
alpaca,
Twitch.
yes.
Make sure that you guys are liking and following and subscribing wherever you guys get your podcasts from. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you guys. Have a good one.